So we finally have some good news. Yes, it is true. We finally have some good news. Now, we don't just have one piece of good news. We don't just have two pieces of good news. We actually have three pieces of good news. Here's what we're going to discuss today. So first off, all I ask is if you can spend just 2 seconds, go ahead, hit that like button, and feel free to share this video with your friends and family over on Facebook. But here are the three things that we're going to discuss today. First, President Biden and Speaker Kevin McCarthy, they didn't come to an agreement over the debt ceiling yesterday on Tuesday, but they have said that there were open discussions, that they are going to have another meeting this Friday, and they're going to talk about further options moving forward and potential compromises. That is part of the good news. The second piece of good news is that inflation, the CPI report came in this morning, and inflation came in at 4.9%. This is actually pretty big. The expectation was 5%, so we had a little bit of a beat here. That's the second part of good news. And the third part is because of the news that is coming out this morning regarding CPI. This is actually giving the Federal Reserve even greater reason to pause interest rate hikes. So that is very good news there, because these interest rate hikes are causing credit card spending to go up. Well, technically they're not causing credit card spending to go up. People are spending more money on credit cards, but at the same time, when the interest rate goes up, credit card interest also increases. So that's good news. We could potentially see a pause. And I want to get into the CPI report. Okay, in just a second, I'm going to get into this. I'm going to show you all. We'll just read through the first page of the CPI report and explain to you what is going on and why this is actually very good news moving forward. Like I said, all I ask is if you can spend just 2 seconds, go ahead and hit that like button. Now let's get to it. First off, again, inflation is 4.9%. The last time that we saw inflation at 4.9% was back in May of 2021. The good news, though, is that inflation, right, it still rose. Again, this is inflation, means it's going up. So it's still rising by 4.9%. We're not seeing deflation. We are seeing a little bit of disinflation, though. This is heavily propped up on shelter. And I'm gonna show you something in just a second. Shelter was the largest contributor to the monthly all items increase. Shelter alone accounts for about a 60% weight on the CPI report, and it's because of goods and services. So shelter alone is a major factor, whether it's positive way or in a negative way. The other two that help prop up the CPI report to 4.9% were gasoline and used vehicles. Those two. Now, core CPI, this is everything minus food and energy. This came in at 5.5% year over year. And that is because, again, food in some cases going up, energy as well going up. So this is part of the reason why core CPI was higher than the headline number of 4.9%. Food at home, though, declined by 0.2% month over month. Meats, poultry, fish, and eggs declined by 0.8%. So that's actually pretty good news. It means it's getting a little bit cheaper. We can actually afford some of these things. But again, food at home declined by 0.2% month over month. Meats, poultry, fish, and eggs declined by 0.8% month over month, which means annualized, it's a 9.6% decline. Let's read the CPI report. Look at this. It says, the Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers, CPI-U, rose by 0.4% in April on a seasonally adjusted basis after increasing 0.1% in March. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reported today, over the last 12 months, the All Items Index increased 4.9% before seasonal adjustments. This is the big one I want to read to you right here. It says, the index for shelter was the largest contributor to the monthly all items increase, followed by increases in the index for used cars and trucks and the index for gasoline. The increase in the gasoline index more than offset declines in other energy component indexes. And the energy index rose 0.6% in April. The food index was unchanged in April, and it was as it was in March. The index for food at home fell 0.2% month over month, while the index for food away from home rose by 0.4%. Again, keep that in mind. You're spending a little less money at home, you're spending more money at restaurants and at fast food places. Why? Because of wages, because it's a service. Right now, we've seen a shift away from goods, and it's now shifting towards services. That is part of the problem, okay? So just keep that in mind. Good news is stuff is starting to become a little less expensive because we're not seeing massive inflation. The bad news is we're still going to have inflation. We're not seeing deflation, okay? There's a difference. So just wanted to fill you in on that. Here's the next thing. Let's talk about the debt ceiling. And one of the main reasons why I want to talk about the debt ceiling is because, first off, lawmakers, this was the big four, okay? They met with President Biden yesterday at the White House to discuss the debt ceiling. What could we do? Where can we go? Where can we kind of meet in the middle if we do? Well, according to the reports, President Biden and the other congressional leaders, they all agreed that a default of our nation's debts is off the table. We can't default. We will not default. There will be an agreement at some point. It just depends, is the majority of Congress behind it, or are they going to have to find a roundabout way? Well, here's what they agreed on. They agreed that in some way there will be an increase to the debt ceiling. They agreed they will meet again on Friday, and they're going to talk about ways that they can fix this, ways that they can come up with an agreement. President Biden said he has a couple options. First off, he is still considering a last-ditch effort that he would use the 14th Amendment to raise the debt ceiling if that was the only option and that was the 11th hour decision. He would do it. We also know President Biden said that he's open to the idea of pulling back all unspent COVID funding. This is something that we didn't hear before. This is something that lawmakers said that they, well, not all lawmakers, but Republicans wanted included. That any unspent COVID funding, which I believe as of right now it's about $100 billion, could be pulled back and could be distributed elsewhere to the areas in need. So we could see that. And by redistributing that money to the areas in need, this means that those areas might not need a bunch of additional funding in this next year. So again, this is kind of where things are going. Lawmakers are trying to figure out where the other side is at. Republicans want to know where Democrats are at, what they're willing to actually accept. Same thing with Democrats wondering about Republicans. What are they willing to do? How would they handle it? Right? That's the big question. Now, I know a lot of people always, message me and send me, comments and ask, is this debt ceiling serious? Is this something that we should really be worried about? The answer is yes. We should all be worried about the debt ceiling. The only good news is, according to President Biden, according to Speaker Kevin McCarthy, they will come to an agreement at some point. We are not going to default on our debts, but until this bill is signed, until our debt ceiling is raised, until we are actually out of this, I'm telling you right now, just prepare, because if something were to go sideways, you want to make sure you're ready. Now, let's talk about the final piece of good news. And this is that because of the reports that came out this morning, because of CPI coming down, right? We're seeing disinflation. Because of things like, goods becoming less expensive, but it's the service side of things that are becoming more expensive. That's fine. We knew that was coming. And now we're going to get through the service side of things. And as we make our way through it and out, everything's going to start coming down. We know shelter is going to come down. Okay? We've seen it. As shelter comes down, as gas prices potentially come down, right? And they're coming down a little bit. Expectations are going to go up next month. So even though gas and gasoline and all fuel is going to be probably a little bit less expensive this next month in the CPI report, the following month it's actually going to jump up. Okay? So we need shelter to drop. Good news though, the Federal Reserve is more likely now than ever before to pause interest rate hikes. That's good news. Like I said, if you have a credit card, that means your credit card interest payments are not going up. They will stay the same, hopefully. This means if you want to go and get an auto loan, chances are this is going to be the height of it. This is going to be the highest the rates will be, hopefully. If that's the case, now everything's going to come down. If you are considering going to get a home loan, guess what? The interest rate, this is probably going to be the peak of it. I'm not saying it is. It's probably going to be pretty close. It's going to start to come down. Here's the only thing. Until home prices come down, it might not be the best time to buy. Again, not financial advice. I'm just saying that's what experts are telling us, to wait and be patient. So, like I said, a lot of good news here. A lot of stuff's coming out. And again, which is great that we're starting to see some more positive news for our economy. Because as of lately, we haven't seen the greatest news. So this is actually pretty good news. If you think this is good news, do me a favor, go ahead, hit that like button. Also, consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the next one.